So with the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2, a lot of people are questioning how good would the sales be specifically because of the price of this thing in various parts of the world. It's not just how much it was in the United States at 450 US dollars, which I think is actually quite reasonable, but in terms of other places around the world, for example, in Canada, it was launching at $630 or $699, which is far more expensive. And then in other places in the world, it was also more expensive. But how well would it sell was the question. And looks like we have our answer here, at least in the UK. So the game business, the new publication here by Christopher Dring and Jeff Keighley, who are co-owners, I believe, of this new publishing website where they go over game numbers, they go over what's happening within the industry. And Christopher Dring, I believe, being based in the UK, now we have information here about how well the Switch 2 actually did do in the UK. We've seen different claims out there that this may be the biggest console launch of all time, beating like the PS5 and the PS4, but there really isn't any solid information to confirm that. However, in terms of its launch in the UK, it looks like it is Nintendo's biggest launch ever, specifically Nintendo, but still not as big as PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, or at least, and even the Xbox Series X. So here is the article. Nintendo Switch 2 is Nintendo's biggest UK launch, but doesn't surpass PS5 or the Xbox Series, saying that the Nintendo Switch 2 is the fastest selling Nintendo machine in UK history. This is via Nielsen IQ data that is revealing this. And they say it beat the previous best-selling hardware launch for the company's 2010s Nintendo 3DS. And to me, that's kind of funny to think about because the 3DS started very well with a launch, but then I think it got pretty bad and they had to do a price cut for it and then give a bunch of free games for your Nintendo account. A lot, like I think a lot of retro games and stuff. I have that because I had an original Nintendo 3DS. And I got the free stuff they did end up giving out for having to do the price cut so quickly. But overall, the 3DS ended up selling very well after that. But the launch was great, and then it kind of fell off. And I wonder if there will be any similarities here with the Nintendo Switch 2, specifically because of the pricing of the unit itself. They say here that the Nintendo Switch 2 outsold the launch of the Nintendo Switch by more than 2-1. And that's pretty wild because the Switch was a great console. It's still a great console with the amount of games on it, and it came in far cheaper at launch. And they say the Nintendo Switch was very supply constrained at launch, which definitely affected it. The Switch 2 is not supply constrained. You can walk into stores and you can see that they have units. I think there's still some units available in stores. Scalpers hopefully got owned on this at the end of the day. And they say the Nintendo Switch 1 did over 80,000 units at launch, and the 3DS managed 113,000. This is all according to Nintendo. And then Nielsen IQ does not share the full figures. So when it comes to the Switch 2, it is actually the fourth best-selling console in terms of units. The PS5 is number 1, the PS4 is number 2, the Xbox Series is number 3, and then the Nintendo Switch 2 comes in here at number 4, and this is specifically in the UK. It will be very interesting to see what the full sales numbers do come in at. I think the launch was very successful, will continue to be very successful, and it's going to sell well for a while here. The obviously big difference is going to be the price of it. But I think with the Switch 2 and the higher price, like if you're trying to compare it to the 3DS, is that it is kind of packaged in a way that you feel like you're getting a more premium device. You do feel like you're getting a higher powered thing here. You don't really think of it as much as only a handle, but you also think of it as a at-home console. And I think people are willing to spend a bit more on that type of device versus strictly a handheld gaming device with a small screen and everything that the Nintendo 3DS was. The overall reviews of the Nintendo Switch 2 are good. I mean, it is what it is. It isn't revolutionary, but I think if you're somebody who's been playing on the Nintendo Switch since it did come out in 2017 and haven't seen any sort of spec bumps or anything, and you take that and you compare it to the Switch 2, it is a pretty big upgrade. Like I have my Switch 2 now, and although it doesn't really have too much Nintendo uniqueness and revolutionary stuff that they do add into a console launch, it does, I guess, have the mouse controls. Everything about the Nintendo Switch 2, except potentially the LCD screen, which I think is good, and I do believe it's vibrant from what I've played, and I don't have really any issues with it. OLED would be better, but everything other than that is way better than the Nintendo Switch. It's way better than the Nintendo Switch OLED. The Joy-Cons are better. The way that they attach are way better. The stand on the back, comparatively to the launch of the 2017 Switch, is way better. It's basically the same as the OLED one. It just doesn't have that extra plastic in the middle, but functions the exact same. I don't really have any complaints about it. The screen size is phenomenal. Playing with the Nintendo Switch 2 has me sitting there thinking that handhelds going forward, I really don't want a screen that is smaller than that. I want that big experience because it just makes the games look better, makes it so much easier to play. Kind of tired of these smaller handhelds with these smaller screens unless it is only playing like retro games. Like the Analog Pocket screen is phenomenal. I'm okay with that size of screen because it's playing Game Boy Advance and Game Boy Color games, and they look far better on that size of screen. But the Switch 2, I think, is a very nice upgrade. And you see things like Cyberpunk 2077 running on it, how they were able to optimize it for a far lower powered console than what is out there. I think it will have a good future. The question is, will sales continue to soar? Will people still want to pay the prices for it, especially in places around the world where it isn't $450? It is significantly more than that. You start running into the territory of looking at other things that you could buy and get way more value from than picking up a Nintendo Switch 2. That's if, of course, you don't really care that much about the Nintendo exclusives. But the launch has been good. Was a lot of outrage about the pricing when they did show it off. Of course, that always does happen, but it seemingly has not had an effect on people running out there and buying it. And you see that across the board, even with something like the PS5 Pro, where everyone was complaining about the price of it, it still sold very well at launch. The initial sales, I don't think, are indicative of how good the console is going to sell throughout its lifetime. But if it doesn't start off well at launch, where you have the early adopters and the enthusiasts buying it, then you know you do have issues. But we will see. Will the Switch 2 surpass the Switch 1? That will be very hard with the amount of units it did sell. But I think it will still sell a good amount of consoles, like at least 80, 90 million plus units for the Nintendo Switch 2. At least that is my prediction. But on the video there, if you did enjoy this video, hit that thumbs up. If you're new here, hit that subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thank you.